Okay, joining us now, member of both the Intelligence and Armed Services Committees, Independent Senator Angus King of Maine. Good to have you on board with us.
So much to talk about.
Yeah, there's nothing to talk about.
I know.
No.
Let's. What would you like to start with?
Well, let's start with that extraordinary statement yesterday by this fellow Miller that
this is where we're at. This is the talk of the morning.
The president is in charge of everything. I mean, John Marshall settled that question in 1803. This is Mr. Trump meet Mr. Madison. Division of powers, independent judiciary, fundamental principle of our Constitution. And those statements yesterday were absolutely breathtaking.
Justice Marshall in 1803, as we were saying offset. Warren Burger in 1974, and
the Youngstown
Nixon.
sheet and tube case on Truman. Presidents do have expansive authority in foreign policy and particularly in national security, but it's limited by the Constitution.
Not limited, and I've had Bush administration officials contact me this morning saying, hey, we got a lot of rulings we didn't like from the Supreme Court, but there's a system of checks and balances, and you have to abide by the Constitution.
But, Joe, part of the problem is I don't want to sound like I'm puffing up lawyers, but Miller and Trump, I don't think, have a gut-level understanding of checks and balances, of the Constitution, of how the relationships work.
Well, it's obvious that Miller doesn't.
Well, that's what he said yesterday, and this is the thing that really bothers me, and I think you had this comment earlier. What you're seeing appears to be a somewhat systematic effort to delegitimize any opposition. The press, now the judiciary, tweeting so-called judge. That guy wasn't a so-called judge. He's a judge. He's a federal judge appointed by the President of the United States, confirmed by the Senate.
99-0.
He's not a so-called judge. And you know, it's like, remember the tweets of the intelligence in quotes?
In quotes, right.
You're delegitimizing institutions, and that's really bad for the country.
We didn't even talk about him talking about voting rights. We didn't even talk about all the other things that have led up to this. That really, I mean, you talk about a systematic, targeted campaign to delegitimize all systems.
Including the electoral process.
And we can't pretend the president doesn't know about this and tweeted something he didn't mean. We just have to stop thinking that maybe he doesn't get it, or maybe he's not smart enough, or maybe he's not educated in rules of the law. We can't do that anymore.
Well, you're starting
this is becoming really dangerous.
You're starting to see a pattern.
There's a pattern, and there seems to be an angle. And I'm not going to say what it is because, Joe, you told me not to. But I will tell you that at some point we all are going to have to say it. What this looks like. I understand not getting ahead of your skis.
Let's not get ahead of our skis.
I totally understand that, which is why I'm going to take your advice.
Walks back the comment, John.
They have to walk it back.
They have to walk back the comment that the, quote, president will not be questioned.
I bet you $1,000 they don't walk back that comment.
Well, then we have to start saying what we all are thinking.
The dangerous territory that every one of Trump's opponents have said we'd get to.
Look, just to Mika's point, again, we'll say it again. Steve Miller went on, he did all the Sunday shows. Donald Trump sent a tweet out saying that he approved of it, patted him on the back. I just have not seen Donald Trump ever reverse course in that way to suddenly come out and have the White House then repudiate someone.
It's absolutely not his pattern. He digs in. He's already complimented Stephen Miller. He's already said he thinks that he's done a great job. What I want to ask the senator is, how does all of this factor into the confirmation hearings over Judge Gorsuch? Because you have a very clear clash here, a clash over what the role of the judiciary should be, what the role of the executive should be. And I think that there are a lot of Democratic senators, your colleagues, who are going to want the judge to clearly articulate what he believes the separation of power should be. And going even further than that, if he would condemn Stephen Miller and Donald Trump for taking such an expansive and almost jingoistic view of the president's power.
Well, I haven't met with him yet, but this is a delicate situation for a judicial candidate because they don't want to prejudge cases that may come before them. But you can also use that as an excuse to not answer those questions. And I think he's going to have to answer those questions straightforwardly, because we need to know what his views are, particularly on this issue. Now, the comments about he said it was disheartening, those kinds of things, that was somewhat reassuring, but he didn't say it publicly. You can't whisper in senators' ears and then not say it publicly.
His spokesperson did confirm that he said that, which I'm with you. I think that was heartening, that a nominee would say that, but he's obviously going to be confronted with all of these statements that the White House is making right now, especially what Stephen Miller made yesterday, that the president's power will not be questioned.
And it's hard to tell where he's going to end up on these things, but he clearly is a judge's judge. I mean, he thinks about the judiciary. He has deep respect for the separation of powers and those kinds of things. But really, I think we're going to have to dig in, and it's going to be tough questioning.
Sounds like you haven't made up your mind yet on.
I have not. I'm starting to read his opinions, and I'm going to meet with him.
Oh my gosh, you're going to actually do what senators are supposed to do, and you're going to, instead of prejudging, you're actually going to go to the hearings and listen.
That's what we hired me for. That's what they hired me for. I've gone to a lot of hearings. I make a practice of going to hearings in important issues that I'm not even on the committee.
Yeah.
I went to Rex Tillerson's hearing. I'm not on foreign relations. I went to the hearing on Pruitt before Environment Committee, because you learn a lot from just being there. I can tell you what I've learned, though. The seats for the audience in those hearings are not as comfortable as the seats for the Senate.
Well, there you go. Senator Angus King, thank you so much.
Senator.
Great to have you on the show.